Welcome to Book World, The Great Escape. I'm author CJ Peterson. My co-host over here is author Michael Scott Clifton. Down below, we have today with us author James R. Callan, mystery author. Welcome, James.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Today, we're super excited to have him on with us. We're talking mystery. And this is season 5, episode 5. This is our 5th season. We've talked about a couple different subjects. We had a couple different authors. And today we have author James Callan. He has a couple different books. Today we're going to be talking about several of his books. But first of all, James, what makes your mystery books different than other mystery books? Let's start there.
Well, first, let me say that I classify mine as cozy. Nobody can really have objections to them. So I keep it that way. Secondly, I try to have it be something that is worked through the clues very carefully to get to the answer. I don't have any gods descending down and giving us the answers. The poor people I have for their protagonists, in one case, it's often a priest. Other case, it's a young woman who works in AI, by the way, and they have to figure out. They're not professionals, but they have to figure out the clues. They have to figure out what's happening, and if they don't figure it out, we don't have a book. I'm not going to come in the last chapter and have everything just miraculously happen for them. They've got to figure it out. Which means I have to figure it out.
Do you have like a lot of red herrings throughout the book, or is there some twists and turns? Or
I'm sorry, say it again.
Do you have a lot of red herrings throughout the book? Is there a lot of twists and turns? Is it
I try to get red herrings into it. Try to. As many as I can, but sometimes it's more difficult to work them in. I would like for my wife, who reads it as it goes along, not to know what's happening. If she knows what's happening, I say, "Oh, okay, backtrack. I've got to go back and fix that up." I would not like her to understand who did what to whom.
So it's not like Murder, She Wrote, where it's like it's always the first person they've interviewed, and then it go to the next two, and you always know what was the first person that they interviewed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I would not let it be the first person.
Breadcrumbs. You leave a trail for the
There you
reader
go.
to follow. Yep.
So a couple people saying hi. Levinstein's here. Super Hubby says hi.
Hello there.
Yes. Awesome. So what books do you currently have out? What did you currently have out?
The latest book that is out is called To Force a Deal. To Force a Deal. And the thing that makes it quite different from other books I've written is that one of the principal characters is in a coma and stays in a coma, and the doctors say, "We have no idea." They were burning his church, and he got hit on the head lightly, not enough to keep him out for an hour. But now he's in a coma for days and days, and we don't know why.
Oh.
And so they decide that maybe one of the things they should do is call down his best friend and let his best friend talk to him and see if he can't somehow bring him out of this coma. And Father Frank comes down, and things get more complicated, of course. And eventually they do figure out why he is in this more or less psychological coma. It's not anything physically with keeping him in a coma, psychological. They finally come to that, and that's a mystery in itself, and they finally get that resolved. But of course, then things get more complicated because now we have to say, who tried to burn that church? What happened? And so we then move into that phase to try and figure out how that happened. And that became To Force a Deal because someone was trying to force a deal.
And that's part of your Father Frank series.
It is. That would be number 5.
Number 5.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, before we started the show, you mentioned on if it's going to hurt talking about it or not. talking about listening to your characters, and it had something to do with this particular book. Do you want to talk about that, or is that going to hurt the plot line talking about that?
No, it wouldn't hurt the plot line, but it's actually the book just before that one, which was When a Sure Thing Fails. When a Sure Thing Fails. And that turns out to be the one where the 78-year-old woman goes down on vacation and gets kidnapped on the first night there. But the kidnappers didn't know what they were getting because she might have been 78 years old, but her mind is very sharp. Her wit is very sharp. And she manages, they take her out deep in the forest to a cabin, but she manages to escape and is not really willing to turn loose of it. Well, without giving too much away, the police say, well, let's see. You escaped, you weren't injured, and you didn't pay any money. And he said, no harm, no foul. Well, for Eula, that just incensed her, that the police would take that attitude. They had kidnapped her, they had kept her for 3 or 4 days. It was a crime. And so she says, I'm going to take care of it myself. And she sets about doing it. So the fact that she's 78 years old doesn't slow her down a bit. She's more than a match for her younger 2 men who kidnapped her.
But you weren't going to originally write about her, though.
No. Originally, that was going to be a Crystal Moore book. She would be the protagonist, the main person in it. Eula was her grandmother, who had been in the other Crystal Moore books in a minor role.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about the book and trying to figure out all the different things that will happen in it. And this voice pops into my head, and it's Eula, and she says, I should do the book. So I hadn't invited her in, but she popped in. And after a while, I said, well, why do you think she should be? And she said, well, in truth, it's such a good role. I want it. But she said, in fact, well, she's not shy. She's not shy. 78 years old doesn't mean shy. But she said, I am clever enough to deal with these lunkheads that kidnap me. And I am smart enough to deal with and tough enough to deal with the really bad guy in there, who is a fairly vicious man and who has sort of caused all of this to happen. She said, I can do that. Crystal, my granddaughter, is just as sweet and lovable as can be, and I love her, and she's done a lot of good things, but I'm tougher than she is. She said, it's my book. And once again, she said, and it's a good role, I want it. So I thought about it, and I only had to think about it about 20 or 30 minutes, and I said, she's right. She's right. It would be a better book if it's her book. Now, the granddaughter is in the book, comes into the book, but it is definitely Eula's book. So it's the first book I've written that had a main person, protagonist or sleuth, if you want to think of the mystery, who was 78.
Wow.
Yeah, sometimes our characters like take over the book where they're kind of meaning to come into the minor character and they just take over the book. Or sometimes you meet somebody and like, they'd be a really cool character in this book, and next thing you know, they just take over. And sometimes they come up with better storylines than we as authors have. And people kind of think you almost kind of have to be a little bit schizophrenic being an author, but you really kind of do, because you have to be kind of multi-minded. And being an author, it's fun, but you got to let the characters take over. Says, do you have a character in any of your books?
Yes. Okay. I talk to writers groups often about developing a character. And I say to them, you've got to sit in the porch swing and visit with this character until they are a real friend of yours. And because they're in the middle of the story, they will have something to say about it. But you're the author, it's your book, you make the final decision. They might make their part better, but it may not be better for the book. You have to decide that. In this case, I thought about it. I didn't just automatically say, okay, you got it, Eula. I thought, but it didn't take me long to see that she was right. So I recommend that you listen to what your characters have to say, but don't just take it automatically. You are in charge. It's your book. You decide. But I would certainly suggest listen to them when they speak to you and see what they have to say.
As a proud pantser, that is I believe, a characteristic of pantsers, the ability to change the direction that you're going in without having such rigid, character formation that you can't change or add things to your character to make he or she more interesting. And that's a good point, James, because I think, and of course, I think you've probably seen that too, CJ. Authors who have a good story, but they straitjacket their character, even though as they start to flesh it out, they either can't change it because they're too deep into for example, if you've planned everything out already, or there is a natural inclination, I think, if you've had an original idea about a character. I think there is some resistance, just natural resistance, to try to change a character to make it into, maybe a better fit for what you're writing. And I think we probably all had that happen to us and seen it with others, as well.
Being the poster child of a pantser, I've never had a problem changing my character, so I wouldn't know. Trevor wants to know, do you envision yourself as a specific character in any of your books?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Trevor wants to know, do you envision yourself as a specific character in any of your books?
No. That's not to say some of my characteristics may not flow into one. For instance, Father Frank, a real advocate of Dr. Pepper's, and he always drinks Dr. Pepper's, and that came from me. That was my approach to it. So some of my things I think probably fit in there. Some of my aspects of some friends fit into there. I would say to some extent, Eula Moore probably came to me from an aunt I had who is no longer with us, which is always best if you're modeling after somebody that they're not still alive and can object.
Oh, I have people who are alive that are in my books. They love it.
Oh, well, some do, but you always have the possibility that they're going to say, wait a minute, I'm better than that or whatever. But so some people, myself, but other people will fit in certain aspects. I don't think I've ever really designed one or developed one that's really fit to a person, but certainly certain aspects of them do. And I'm going to say, I want to address a little something that Michael just said. I'm a combination of a pantser and a person who plots.
Planner.
In this sense, when I get one of these going, I really feel uncomfortable until I have a possible solution. If it's a mystery, I want to have a possible solution in my mind. And then I'm ready to go forward. Probably my engineering background. But most of the time, that's not the end of the book. That's not the way it goes. But I'm encouraged to get busy and start writing because I know there's an end. But usually that's not the end I will take. It will change. And in the case of the last two that we have mentioned, that is, when a sure thing fails and to force a deal. The last month, I was through with the book, except I couldn't write the ending. The one I had thought I had in the beginning said, no, that doesn't work. And I had to really work to say what will work, what will satisfy me and the reader with an ending. And I just took the time to do it and came up with one that satisfied me. And it appears that they worked fairly well for the readers too.
Good.
So I need that little safety bit when I start a book to say there is a finish. So,
James, of course, we've known each other for a number of years through NetWo, Northeast Texas Writers Organization. I guess that's where our paths first crossed many years ago. And you had mentioned that you speak to writers groups, and of course, I've heard you speak on several different occasions. And I think that, of course, you and Caleb Hurdle, our old friend. I consider y'all to be some of the most knowledgeable people I've met in my writer's career in terms of the things that you know, and also in your ability to be able to impart that information in a kind way without, necessarily stepping on toes. So I really admire that aspect of you. And I was wondering, people who might be aspiring authors, or maybe they haven't been writing for a long time, and of course they struggle with the same things we've probably all been through. What is it that you have seen in your career and what you have observed, not just in your own writing, but what you have seen in others through your speaking engagements, etc., that writers often struggle with? What would you tell them? Um, you know, how to make things easier for themselves, but the mistakes they make or the things they struggle with. What is it? Of course, we only have a 30-minute podcast, but if you could just boil it down to a couple of bullet points, what would you tell an author or an aspiring author what they should do or how they should approach their writing?
So one of the things that, and this is not going to be very insightful to anybody, but important. I'm reminded of the man that, whether in a race, and the guy racing beside happened to see that he was beside this really good writer. And so as they're jogging along, he was just bugging, what's the reason? What's the secret? What do you do? And the guy, finally, they got to the finish line so that he could stop and take a breath. And he said, because he'd been saying something as they were going along, but the other man couldn't understand it. He would say, bun and seat, bun and seat. And he said, well, I don't know. So when they got to the end and he had time, he said, now what were you saying? And he said, put your bun in the seat and type. Simply is sitting down and doing it. I'm going to say it anyway. I have a sister, had a sister, she's now died, who can talk forever, can tell great stories, has a great memory, remembers everything, or at least she says she does, and nobody texted her. And she was, for 15 years, the last 15 years of life, going to write a book. But she never wrote more than
to write a book.
Yeah. Never more than the, first chapter. Maybe she would get busy and write a page or two or 5 or 10. Mm-hmm. That's it. So perseverance, you have to stick with it. And you say, well, wait a minute, that's not very insightful to doing it. If you want to complete and do something, it really is. And it's very, very easy to get discouraged. Mm-hmm. I've written all of this and I don't know how it's going and blah, 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 and quit. So perseverance is the first thing. And secondly, read a lot of good authors, not to copy what they do, but to see what resonates with you. What was it that I really liked?
Mm-hmm.
What didn't I like? You know, oh, gee, I remember I skipped over several pages there. What was that? Because I don't want to write those. I want to write the pages that people want to go back and read a second time. So, persistence, take whatever time it takes. You have to do it. And it's not easy to do, it's easy to quit. My wife wouldn't agree to this, but the truth of the matter is, it's very easier. It's easier for me to hop up and go help her do something than to still try to write out a few more pages. Just any excuse, because you're looking at a page and you're trying to put something down, and it's excruciating. And one last thing I will say, and that is, when you're doing this, don't stop at everything wrapped up. Stop in the middle of a scene, and when you come back the next day or whenever, you've got a running start. You already say, oh, there's a scene, I know how to finish that. And you can then move right on to the next one and the next one. So it's a simple thing, but that I find helpful myself is that I stop in the middle of something so that when I come back, I've already got a running start on it.
That's
You
good.
Now,
I get asked a lot at the book events we go to that are quite similar to what you've said is, well, I started this book. Well, I got to 3 chapters. I'm still rewriting it. How long has that been? Oh, 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tell them basically, the number one thing you should do as a writer is finish what you start, because you can fix a flawed manuscript, but you can't fix an unfinished one.
yes. Yes, and I've sometimes heard people say, some speaking writers say, the first chapter is the most important, so you get that one perfect. And I tend to say, no, write that first chapter and keep going. At the end, in fact, you may change that first chapter entirely after you finish the book and see how things went. So you keep going, get the story down. The end. That doesn't mean it's the end of your work.
Oh no, that's just beginning. Then you got to go and edit it.
That's where you're just going to get going. But you get to that. And a lot of writers either want it to be perfect and they dwell on this. I know some, in fact, lots of them, who are still working on the first paragraph.
Yes.
So to be perfect. And eventually they may have a perfect paragraph and no book at all.
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of equate it to, you got to get the sand in the box before you start to even build the castle. So get the sand in the box.
Yeah.
You got to get the words on the paper. So get the sand in the box, get the story out of you before you forget it.
Yes. Yes. I like that. The sand in the box.
Get the sand in the box, and then you put the, you it's like building a sandcastle. You don't just bomb at a whole sandcastle, and then you put your, you build your pylons for your castle, and then you build your walls for your castle, and then you start to put the little details into the castle.
Yeah.
As you're doing your fine editing. It's building a sandcastle.
Yeah. Yes.
And
which we're doing
first.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So I think those are, practical things. Then you can get into lots of details about how to develop characters or how to deal with dialogue or whatever. But the basic stuff, if you don't do those basic things, you're not going to get a book. You're not going to get a story. And my wife claims she's not a writer. And Jory, you remember Jory?
Jory Sherman, yes.
All right, Jory one day just would not take no from her and just demanded she was going to come and take his class and she was going to write. And so we took over dragging her feet and put her in there, and she had to do this. And she wrote a story. And lo and behold, it was published in a book of short stories, because she said it's too much work. It's too hard, too difficult. But she did it because somebody made her sit down and do it. Jory was I don't know whether you knew Jory or not, CJ, but he was, Jory Sherman was a remarkable man.
Yeah.
And I went to see him. He was in terrible health for many, many years. Serious diabetic, terrible health. I went to see him in the hospital, which ultimately turned out to be 3 days before he died.
Aww.
And so, what's going on? And he's in the hospital bed. He said, I'm plotting out the next book. Plotting out the next book. I have no doubt he was.
Probably. We have a couple minutes left. Do you have any advice for somebody who wants to write mysteries?
Well, first of all, where do you get ideas for mysteries? You look at the news. Every time you just look at the daily news. And somebody, I don't know if it was CJ or somebody, says, you walk by 100 stories a day.
Oh, yeah.
A writer sees 10 of them, sees there are actually stories there. So to find an idea, you simply have to look around you and see what's happening. Look at the news. Newspapers are great things. I'm sorry we don't have many newspapers anymore, but you can get it online. That's a little dangerous because online can usurp all of your time and nothing will happen except there are just so many interesting things you won't get going. But ideas are all around you. Find one that you have a feeling for. May have been a great novel for Michael or for CJ. May have been a great novel for me, but you have to decide it's a great idea for you that you would be interested in, because you have to maintain your interest over some period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So find that, sit down and think about it. You don't have to start writing the first day. Think about it. What will make this good? What would I be interested in if I were working on this particular one? And after a while, this began to fill out in your brain, and you will have a lot of it developed right there for you before you sat down and put down a word. But now you've done that, sit down. What did I do? Sit down and do it. Write. Keep the fun in the chair and write. And if you do that, we all have stories in us. It's a matter of just taking it and doing it.
Right.
Awesome.
So,
well, thank you, sir. You've been a font of wisdom. To learn more about James Callan's books, you can look at jamesrcallan.com. That's JAMES, the letter R, and CALLAN.com. Check out his books. Check out his bio. You can check out everything about him at jamesrcallan.com. He is online at multiple platforms. I have found him. He is actually very easy to find. One of the few authors who's actually really good at that. So you have to find him online.
And the R is important because there are a lot of James Callans who write. So James R. Callan.
Consistent in his profile picture. So again, one of the few authors who is actually consistent in doing that. So congratulations, sir, on doing that as well. So he's very easy to find online. Next week, we will have author Dana Wayne, and we're going to be talking romance genres. Make sure to check it out as we head toward Valentine's Day. So make sure to check us out next week, 4 o'clock, same time, same station. We'll check you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.